The common people here said that it would be political suicide for him to support this resolution, and obviously that weighed into their decision.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much for that. In Iran, thousands of government supporters gathered to call for the execution of opposition leaders following last week's anti-government rallies. During Friday prayers, a senior cleric said the opposition has lost its reputation among the people. He called for restrictions on opposition leaders Mehdi Karoubi and Mir Hossein Mousavi to prevent them from communicating with their supporters. The Iraqi government has imposed a curfew in some parts of the country, and that's in response to angry protests. In Basra, in the south, protesters blocked a bridge. They were calling for the provincial governor to quit, and they're demanding better services as well as jobs. And in the city of Kut, protests there ended with some demonstrators storming a regional government headquarters. At least one teenager was killed in the clashes that followed. The city does remain under curfew, and many of the protests have been organized online by young people, as Jane Araf reports now from Baghdad.
Nofal Falahi refers to this bench as her office. It's from here, with wireless modems, that she and two other art students have launched an internet campaign. It mobilizes young people to go out on the streets to protest.
There's many rules, working alone, and so we want to put them together. There was 1,000 people when we started on the first week.
It's all carried out on Facebook. Access to the web was essentially banned in Iraq before 2003. While Nof and her friends had seen the internet a few times, they'd never been able to use it. Mustafa is now an expert in using videos and photos.
We're trying to get our message across, and we say that the youth can change things.
This college is a small oasis of freedom, but students here are trying to widen it, using technology to reach out to young people across Iraq and the region to demand change.
Haider Fadel uses a mapping program to show where the protests have been held in Iraq and where they're expected.
This is the map of Iraq.
Soon they'll have photos and videos attached. The internet is a tool their parents didn't have, but it's just a starting point. The vast majority of young Iraqis don't own a computer or have access to the internet. Nof's group, Iraqi Streets for Change, is also relying on flyers and tweets via cell phone to spread their message. Iraqis all have the same complaints: corruption, bad services, lack of jobs. But the young feel their very future is being hijacked.
My Iraqi government, you have every year, $86 billion. I don't have $5. Just like my brother, we don't have $5.
This is the most freedom they've ever had. They don't want to overthrow the system, but for the first time, as a group, they're demanding a better life. Jane Araf, AlJazeera, Baghdad.
The U.S. Secretary of State has called on Pakistan to stop encouraging anti-American sentiment. Hillary Clinton's remarks come amid anger in Lahore over the killing of 2 Pakistanis by a U.S. embassy employee. Raymond Davis says he acted in self-defense when he shot the men last month. The United States believes that he has diplomatic immunity and is putting pressure on Pakistan to release him. Taiwan's former First Lady has been spared a 17-year prison sentence, and that's due to poor health. Wu Chu-chen has been paralyzed from the waist down since being hit by a truck in 1985. Her sentence is now suspended, but she will be confined to her home. A Beijing court has upheld the conviction and 8-year sentence given to a Chinese-born American geologist for stealing state secrets. Zhu Feng was charged in July for obtaining information on the Chinese oil industry. Now, his appeal lawyer argued that the information about the oil industry was widely available. And the Japanese whaling fleet is heading home after its annual whale hunt was cut short by almost a month. The government says it's because of harassment by the anti-whaling group Sea Shepherd. Veronica Pedrosa has the details.
With light beams and smoke canisters, Japan's whaling season comes to an abrupt halt. And now it's official.
For the safety of our fleet, we regret that we have to end the whale hunting survey.
The whaling boats had already suspended the hunt, turned around and headed home after being hounded by a hard-line anti-whaling group. Boats from the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society had been chasing the leading ship, throwing flares and stink bombs.
It's regretful that these disruptive activities took place. So from our point of view, we would like to make sure such things don't happen in the future.
The Japanese boats are allowed to hunt for what they say are scientific purposes. But critics point out the whale meat not used for study is sold for people to eat in Japan. So they say the real reason is profit.
The key here is an economic one. We have to sink the Japanese whaling fleet economically. We have to bankrupt them. And after 6 years, that's exactly what's happening. We come down here every year stronger. They come down here every year weaker. And we're going to drive them out of the sanctuary.
Japan's decision to end the whaling season early has already been welcomed by another government.
In the view of the Australian government, it's not time to celebrate until we get a decision from Japan that they are stopping whaling for good.
And there's a potentially greater threat to the whalers. They're subsidised by the Japanese government, but they've only killed about a fifth of their quota. Having ended the season early, they reportedly stand to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Veronica Pedrosa, Al Jazeera.
The headlines for you on Al Jazeera. At least 70 people are thought to have been killed during demonstrations across Libya, and security forces in the city of Benghazi and many other towns in the eastern part of the country have left the streets. The people are calling for leader Muammar Gaddafi to step down. Security remains tight in Bahrain's capital after shots were fired at anti-government protesters on Friday. The wounded were then taken to the city's main Salmaniya hospital, where protesters have gathered outside, defying a ban on demonstrations. The father of one of the victims of the protests buried his son on Friday, and in a sign of growing anger, he lashed out at the ruling family.
You cannot rule over me. You can rule over Baluchis and Pakistanis and others. I'm Bahraini. I'm 57 years old. I've lived here all my life, and I know where you, the royal family, the Khalifas, come from.
The United States has vetoed a UN resolution to brand Israeli settlements illegal. Instead, Washington has offered to support a weaker, non-binding presidential statement that rejects the legitimacy of Israel's settlements. It's prompted angry Palestinians to vow to reevaluate the entire Middle East peace process. Ambassador Susan Rice outlined the U.S. stance.
Our opposition to the resolution before this Council today should therefore not be misunderstood to mean we support settlement activity. On the contrary, we reject in the strongest terms the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlement activity. Unfortunately, this draft resolution risks hardening the positions of both sides. It could encourage the parties to stay out of negotiations, and if and when they did resume, to return to the Security Council whenever they reach